You are listening to the Young Black Travelers podcast. Black voices chatting on experiential travel, dedicated to creating a global community of travelers. Be bold, be inspired, be spontaneous. We are YBT.
Welcome and welcome back to the Young Black Travelers podcast. Today's episode, we are going to talk about a Brazil experience. And to do so, we have Jacque. Jacque, we are so excited to have you on the podcast today and can't wait to hear about your trip to Brazil. So if you don't mind, you could go ahead and introduce yourself and let's get into it.
Appreciate it, Tony. Yeah, my name is Jacque, and super excited to be here today. I'm a solo traveler, and I'm also a budget traveler. But my biggest thing is just going around, seeing the world, and anywhere where I land, having the opportunity just to link with my people, find my cousins and see what their story is. So I got a chance to go to Brazil, and I'm super excited to talk about it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so people travel all the time, but not every trip changes how you see yourself. But Brazil does something different. So, Jacque, we're going to ask you real quick just to give us one statement either about Black identity in Brazil or the culture shock or even just something unexpected you experienced.
Yeah, for me, Brazil felt like home.
Okay.
And I was very, very, very shocked to see that. I've been through Latin America, I've been to different countries, but to go somewhere and you look like the people, the food looks similar. And, just to even though we don't speak the same language, the mannerisms and the way we communicate is still very, very similar. So I would say it really caught me off guard of how much it felt like home.
Okay, awesome. So this wasn't just a vacation. It was an experience as if you were just coming back home. Okay, great. All right, so we're gonna jump into our icebreaker. And our first question is, if Brazil was a feeling and not a place, what feeling would it be and why?
I would say it's like a summertime cookout with the family.
Oh, okay. And why is that?
Because, when you growing up for me, it was very just interesting because I have, on my father's side, we have a really big family. He's one of 10. And so I can remember, just when it would warm up, the first thing we do is get on the grill. We're going to call the family. I would always look forward to Memorial Day weekend because my relatives, all my cousins, we would get together. We're going to get on the grill. You got the aunties, the uncles, the grandparents there, and the little cousins running around. And so for me, I felt that in Brazil was cool. Like I said, the food was similar. So, they've got this dish called feijoada, and it's basically rice and beans, red beans and rice, you name it, right?
Oh.
I grew up on that. Ain't nothing but a pot of beans or something. So put some meat in there. Grandma gonna throw that pork in there and throw it over some rice. You gonna eat good, That's what it felt like. And so even just seeing the different generations of Brazilians, right? And how they talked about their different experience. My experience from my grandparents to my parents is much different. And so to see that we, came from them and the maturation that happened, it's just always so cool to see. So like I said, I got to stay down there for about 5 weeks. I hit 3 different cities, but the beauty about it was that I got to go in and mingle with locals.
Okay.
And talk to them and hear their different stories. And so it really just resonated with me, feeling like a summertime cookout.
Okay, awesome. So would you say throughout the 3 cities that you visited, was there or were there any specific moment that gave you that cookout feeling that kind of stands out the most? Or was it kind of just leveled throughout each city, that just in general, cookout feeling?
Yeah, so Brazil is a huge country, and I know the running joke is that Americans or people from the U.S. don't really know much about geography and stuff like that, right? And you know, I will say this: like, I didn't realize how big that damn country was. It's huge. For example, like the first city I went to was Sao Paulo.
Okay.
And then from Sao Paulo, I went to Salvador, which is the blackest city outside of Africa. And then from there, I went to Rio. Each city had different vibes. So Sao Paulo is going to be, you know, it's the biggest city in the hemisphere. I think there are about 22 million people. New York's about 8 million. So it's about 3 times the size of New York. Well, over the 3 times size. It's a massive city. It's the financial hub. People are working and bustling. It's definitely big city vibes. Michelin star restaurants, great cocktail bar scene, right?
Okay.
But then you've got Salvador Bahia, which is, it's feel like you in Savannah, Georgia. Like it's small. It's a beach town, but Salvador was actually the capital of Brazil when the Portuguese first took over Brazil. And the reason why was because it was one of the shortest trips from Africa to Brazil. And that was the biggest slave port. So they brought the gold and they brought the enslaved ancestors there. To put things in perspective how black Salvador is, about 400,000 enslaved people came to the United States. 5 million went to Brazil.
Oof. Wow.
So yes, about over 80% of the population in Salvador Bahia is African ancestry. So it is very black. You see aunties with traditional like African wood dress on. The food is like resembles that as well. And just like it's like a warm hug when you pull up. Like everybody's nice, everybody's speaking to you. And it's really communal based. When you get Rio is kind of like, you know, it can be very much your turn up city. It's a very much beach driven culture. Like when I go to Rio, I say this every time. How often is it a Wednesday at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the beach is packed? Like, dude, does anybody work? Because it's just always something going on in Rio. Like there's something to do every single night. So Rio is a different beast within itself. And I think that for me, what resonated with me most was Salvador Bahia really was the place that really just kind of took me in and really just blew my mind, to be honest with you.
Good. Awesome. All right. So another quick question. I know this isn't your first trip there. Did you visit the same 3 cities you did before, or have you been trying different cities each time you go?
Yeah. So as someone who has traveled, I like the fact that I like to go back to places. Like before, it used to be like, yeah, I want to count countries and I want to see how many passport stamps I can get. As I've, gotten a little older, I realized that I really enjoy slower travel. So I'd rather go someplace and stay there longer because I feel like I get a better connection with the place. So the first time I went, yes, I hit the 3 cities. I was on a solo trip. And so I could really had the flexibility to move how I wanted to. This time I took a couple of friends with me. And so we decided to do Rio because we were only going to be there for about 8 or 9 days together. And I really wanted to experience what it was like to be in Rio because there's so many things to do in Rio. And I think one of the things that is very discounted about Rio is that there is an amazing community of Black folks in Rio that often gets overlooked by Christ the Redeemer, the Saint Laurent Steps, going to Sugarloaf Mountain and things like that. Not saying, definitely do those things, but there's also this dope-ass community of Black people who are building a community, who have been discriminated against, and they built these communities out of necessity. And so there's a spot up in the northern zone of Rio called Madureira. And I like to go up there and go to the Ballet Charmy party. So Ballet Charmy is if you've never seen it before, is that Brazilians took line dancing and they used traditional 90s, 2000s R&B from the US. Don't speak a lick of English, can run every song for the 90s and 2000s R&B, you name it. They'll sing it, but then they'll look at you and be like, you start speaking English, they're like, no, we don't know what you're talking about. But the whole community learns these line dances. So even they can tell which neighborhood you from what line dances you know. But when I tell you you see 300 people all knowing the same line dances and it's the whole party dedicated to it. They do it under a bridge every Saturday night. But yeah, it's an amazing place. And I would say like this is the reason why we decided to stay in Rio and not bounce around, because we wanted to get a full experience.
Okay, awesome. All right. So there we have it. Just a little intro to our topic. So we are now going to dive into our first segment. And the first question, I think we pretty much kind of covered it, but maybe you can summarize it again for us. Why Brazil? What was the initial thought when you first chose Brazil? What pulled you towards Brazil?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to 2016 for me, because I remember that the Olympics were getting ready to happen. And so leading up to that, I'd always wanted to go to the Olympics. I'm a big fan of the Olympics, love it. And I always knew Rio was a special place. Rewind before that, when I was like in middle school, I had a good friend of mine who had just recently moved to the States. He was from Brazil, he was from Rio, and he did not speak like a lick of English, my homeboy Pedro. And nobody would be his friend. So I sat at the same table with him, and we would just try to communicate. You know, his Portuguese, my English, and you know, by the end of the school year, like he was speaking English. And so he always would tell me about his home country, and I'm like, well, where's Brazil? What is that? And I remember when the Beautiful video dropped, and he would always show me like, yeah, this is where I'm from. I'm like, oh, that's what's up. Okay. So it always kind of just stuck with me. And I told, like, once I started traveling and I got older, I was like, I always wanted to go to Brazil. So 2016 rolls around. I don't get to make it down there for the Olympics.
Okay.
And I always had it on my list, but every year I would go somewhere else. And I'm like, dang, like, I just don't have a chance to make it. So Brazil is it's a hump. Like, even I live in the South, and from here, you're talking about a 9-hour flight to get down there. So it's definitely one of those things where you have to plan. And if you're going to fly that far, like, I want to stay for a little while. So it never really like made sense. And then last year, the Black Travel Summit came up. I got invited by some friends. And so we decided to head on down to Brazil.
Okay, awesome. So did you ever get to, well, I'm not even sure. Did you ever get to go with Pedro or meet him up there, or is he just not in Brazil anymore?
So Pedro, they came to the States. They still live here.
Okay.
When I went down there my first time 6 months ago, I took a picture in Rio and sent it to him. And he called me and was like, bro, you down there? I'm like, yeah. He was like, you should have told me you were going. I was like, man, look, my bad. But he was like, look, I'm going to send you some recommendations. And if you need anything, like, just let me know. I got some aunties that's still down there so they can hook you up. So I said, okay, cool.
Okay, awesome. All right. So let's talk about the planning of going to Brazil versus like the reality of being there and fully experiencing it, being in the cities. Like, how did that play out for you? Like, what were you anticipating? And then when you got there, did it play out that way, or did things change?
Yeah. This is probably one of the more difficult trips I've had to put together, because the first time I went solo, but then I also met up with some friends halfway through the trip for the Black Travel Summit.
Okay.
So going down there, you know, you hear the things about Brazil. Brazil gets a very bad rep. And we know that everywhere, when there's black and brown people, like, people are like, oh, be careful, it's dangerous, this and that. And, you know, for me, like, safety is something that's very, very subjective, because the way I look and how I move might totally determine how my experience is in another country. So I try not to say, like, you know, I try to speak in terms from, like, for me, my my lived experience was this, and this is how it went for me. But for you, it may be different.
True.
But I'll tell you this, you know, folks get robbed in London and Paris too.
Very much so.
And so when I heard some of the feedback, you know, a lot of things were just, hey, like, you know, watch out for your phones. You know, don't worry about being kidnapped and things like that. And so one of the things I realized quickly was that, hey, like, you know, just be on your P's and Q's. So I keep my little man purse with me if I'm going out, and I got like my wallets and stuff like that, and my phone, I always keep that on me in that type of area. I don't try to keep my phone out too long, even though I do want to capture some of the things in the moment. And then also too, just making sure like you're around good people. Like, the sun feels off, just leave.
True.
And so getting past that, I think it was more of a logistical thing for me because I was going to be covering so much ground. So, you know, you had to plan to get your flights together. So what I usually do is like I book my long haul flight first and then I plan around that. So like I'll book my flight into Brazil and then once I get that done, I'll start looking for like lodging, so like Airbnbs or we're gonna do a hotel. And then also too, because I'm staying a little longer, sometimes I may like try to stay in multiple neighborhoods.
Okay.
Just depends, right? So that was one of those things. Like when you look at that, I was able to find like some great Airbnbs. Not only were they like very, very nice, like Sao Paulo was dope because it's a big city. You got access to like a lot of public transportation, so you can get around on the train. The Ubers were like $2 or $3. And then they also they had a bus system, but I didn't take the bus. And also like Sao Paulo, even though it was such a big city, it was like extremely walkable. So I was able like to go in and kind of map out the things I wanted to see in Sao Paulo because it's such a big city. It's kind of like being in New York, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna do everything in Brooklyn today, and then tomorrow we might hit Harlem, you know? So that's how I did that. And I was able to find some gems. One thing I will say about Sao Paulo, which is interesting, is that Sao Paulo's a big city, but it has like a huge like underground culture. So like if you're looking for things like to do in a city in the States, you might be like, all right, I'm gonna check on Instagram, I'm gonna look at TikTok, I'm gonna hit some people up that live there. Sao Paulo was a little different because it's like here is you have to like be in WhatsApp groups or know somebody in the city because the like all the events kind of rotate. Because like the black folks, like they rotate around the city to different events. So it's like, oh, like on Tuesday, we gonna go to Discopedia. But if you don't know that, then you just don't know. Like if you're not in the know, you're not in the know. So you definitely want to get like Sao Paulo's one of those cities where you got to be connected and kind of tapped in. So luckily I was able to reach out to some homies that been there before, and it was able to kind of let me know that and get me plugged in. Otherwise, like you're kind of just taking a shot in the dark, which is not a bad city to do so in. So I think like just learning how each city was different was very, very interesting because the three cities, then you get to Salvador. Salvador's like this laid back coastal beach town, but they also got a poppin' nightlife. And so for them, like you got to figure out like where you fit in. But the black people there were so communal where it's like you talk to one, they let you know where to go, they give you game. And so I really had a good time out there. And then also when I got to Salvador, I met up with one of my homies. So he flew in from the States, we met in Salvador. And so we were able to make some connections through the Black Traveler Summit before the conference started. And we were able to link up with some of the travelers as well. And then they connected us as well with some of the locals. So we really had a good time. And then by the time we got to Rio, you know, Rio, I think because it's the first, you know what I'm saying, main city that people hear about, that is very much like Rio is on the learning curve as far as like, hey, like we know like in order to get, you know, tourists to pull up to these spots or people to come to these spots, like it's got to be well advertised. So they're very heavy on Instagram, social media. You know, people are talking about the different events that are going on. And Rio, sometimes because there's something going on every single night and day, sometimes it can be very overwhelming because you're like, bro, we just came in. We watched the sun come up. And now y'all talking about going here? So, yeah, like each city had its own different vibe and you had to figure out where you fit in. But I had a great time.
Okay, awesome. You pretty much kind of touched on points for the next two things that I wanted to go into in terms of like Sao Paulo versus Rio versus Salvador. So instead of the general question, I'll say food-wise. Throughout each city that you went to, what food stood out the most to you, or what was your favorite throughout each city, if there was?
Okay. I would say Sao Paulo has an amazing food scene. Like I accidentally ate at a Michelin star restaurant in Sao Paulo. Okay. So I went to this dope event called Discopedia where they play like they do different nights. So they might do like an R&B night, but everything's on vinyl.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a dope event. Shout out to Discopedia. As I'm getting dropped off to the party, my Uber driver was like, hey, like there's a really good like restaurant. I think it's like Casa del Puerco. I'm like, all right, cool. I love swine, brother. So I was like, I might have to check it out. He's like, yeah, it's pretty good, man. You should. So the next day, I ended up being in the neighborhood. I'm like, you know what? I'm about to try it. So they had like this 7-course like menu. And I was like, yeah, let's do it, y'all. And they started bringing the food out. And it was just like, everything was locally grown and sourced. They're bringing out like this different pizzas they made. They made the desserts using like pork. They had everything like soups. And as I started like look up the restaurant after I leave, I'm like, oh, they got a Michelin star. Oh, they got a couple Michelin stars. Okay, all right. The food was great. Did not know. Okay, but they have an amazing food scene there. You can get anything Italian, Asian food. They have a really big Asian food. They have a Libertage is a huge their Asian town or their Chinatown. Okay. It's some of the best ramen I had down there. Was very surprised to see like just the diversity in the food scene. Salvador, it was like going to grandma's house. Like, you know, you walk in the house and grandma cooking a pot of greens, and she got them beans on, and you like, yeah, we about to eat good. That's what Salvador was like. You eat that, you're gonna sit down for a little bit. So it was amazing to see that. Like, and it's also so dope because like all of our food, how we were able, it's a testament to Black folks, how we were still able to keep so many traditions after making, you know what I'm saying, that cross across the water, right? Yeah. And so how we were able to hold on to these traditions, even though we're not even in the same country anymore. So I always think that's cool to see things, how the food showed you a story. There's also this thing called like a cottage. And so it's like it would be like a savory pastry, but then they put like fried shrimp inside of it and they top it with like these mixed vegetables, almost like a pickles. It's got a little spice to it. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And the aunties will sell it in their traditional African wear. So we got a chance to try that. I thought it was pretty good. And then Rio, I love the street food in Rio. Like, of course, you got to hit a Brazilian steakhouse while you're down there, but I love eating like the street food. So like my favorite thing is a coxinha con frango with the chicken. So coxinha with the chicken. It's like a teardrop looking pastry. Okay. And they put like cheese and like shredded chicken in it. And they fry it, and that thing is marvelous. So yeah, I eat really, really good in Brazil, and the beauty about it is that everybody works out. So you get up, you go get you a run on the beach, and burn it right off.
All right, awesome. Wow, I'm gonna have to put Brazil on my list of places to go. Let's see. So, when you went there both the first time and the second time, was there anything that didn't match what you thought it would be?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting thing about Brazil, and the way I've learned to travel now is to really look past the so-called the tourism bubble. Okay. Because what I've learned is like people will intentionally set up these places where they're going to show you the best. Mm-hmm. People are going to treat you great because you're spending US dollar, and they're going to try to mask the things that are going on around you. I get that. I tell people this all the time. Like, I love Mexico, one of my favorite countries in the world. Mm-hmm. But you have to experience Mexico outside of Cancun, Tulum, and Cabo. Mm-hmm. Because to be honest with you, like those regions are only developed for tourism. And so it's made in a way to make you feel good and spend money. But let's dig past that, right? Yeah. When you go to Rio, you have this area called Zona Azul. And you have like Copacabana Beach, which is beautiful. You have Ipanema Beach, beautiful, like some of the best sunsets in the world. Excuse me. But when you start to look at it, you see in this Zona Azul area that all the Black people are in subservient positions. So it's like, hey, like the only Black people I see are like hotel staff or they're working in like the fast food restaurants, or they're in the service industry. But they're not living here. They're not just walking their dogs and like kicking it with their kids and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is very disproportionate because Brazil is 52% black.
Yeah.
So the majority of the country is black, but it's like, where the black folks at? So I remember I said this, and I posted about it, and people are like, well, what the hell are you talking about? There's hella black people in Brazil. Yeah, but not in this area. And I'm like, that's very, very interesting because over the half of the country is this color. What I learned was that when I went up to Zona Norte, the government had pushed all the black people out of Zona Sul and out of the downtown area. So they pushed them up north, and they basically gave them nothing, and so they built favelas. And favelas are communities that were built out of resistance because the government gave them nothing. So when I go up there, I'm like, yo, this is like Wakanda. It ain't nothing but us. And I'm talking to people, and one of the things that stuck out to me was this. A young lady from that area said, she took us around one day in the park and showed us around. She said, yeah, I went to college. I also studied and got, a master's degree in the UK. But that doesn't happen for everybody that comes from where I'm from. She says, even though we make up 52% of the population, less than 2% are in the universities.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? Like, how? She was like, yeah, we didn't have HBCU. So when people told you guys, no, you were able to build schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we were able to educate the majority of the black population during that time. And even now, it opened up the door for black folks to get educated in predominantly white institutions.
Mm-hmm.
They never had that.
Wow.
So now you talk about, hey, like, even if now they create these access programs for people to be able to go to universities. But the thing is that most of the kids from these neighborhoods can't even afford the transportation costs to get to school, to commute to school. So it's still like the numbers are extremely low of people being represented. And we all know, like, one of the greatest areas of social economic movement is going to be through education. If you don't have that, it's going to be very, very tough for you to not do the same thing that your parents were doing.
Yeah.
And so just going back, I tried to be even more intentional about what I was doing. I wanted to spend my tourism dollars with black people.
Okay.
And I made that very clear. I made sure my homies knew, like, hey, like, we're going to go on a little Africa tour and learn about, like, how we actually got here, right? And why it's important to understand, like, even though I think we're very privileged. Like, even in the U.S., like, we had the Jim Crow era, we had the Civil Rights era, and a lot of countries where there is large representation of black folks have not had these official movements that are put together a framework for people to live in a way that they can actually, survive or thrive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, like, one thing about that made me very, very intentional about how I was going into this space, how I was going to spend my money, and where I was going to spend my time.
Okay. Right. I love that. I love that you really took all of that into consideration, and for the second trip, really just like you were intentional about the trip where you went and just ensuring that you spread the dollars and the love amongst our people. So that is great. So I want to pause really quick right here because I want us to like digest all of that and really just like take it in. And we are going to take our first break, and we will see you guys back in a second. All right, here we go. All right, a quick pause before we jump back into the episode. If you signed up for the opportunity to attend and volunteer at the Governor's Ball with Young Black Travelers, this is your reminder to keep an eye on your email this week. Our team will be reaching out with more information, updates, and next steps. So make sure you're checking your inbox and staying ready. And listen, this is a huge opportunity. The Governor's Ball is one of the biggest music festivals out there. So whether you're attending, volunteering, networking, or just soaking in the experience, we hope you enjoy every moment of it. Most importantly, rep YBT well, show up with good energy, build connections, and make the most of the opportunity. And if you want to learn more about the festival itself, head over to governorsballmusicfestival.com. All right, now let's get back into the episode. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are going to jump into our second segment where we are going to talk a little about Black identity and culture. So, Jacque, what can you share about the Afro-punk experience in Brazil, or your experience with that?
Yeah. That was another hidden gem. Like, we kind of stumbled on the Afro-punk.
Okay.
So, as we were planning this trip, it was supposed to be like 5 of us going. But you know how things go. Sometimes it doesn't make it out the group chat.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, that 5 may turn to the last 2 standing. So, me, shout out to my homeboy Daryl. The group made it out. I mean, it made it out the group chat, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we started doing some research on Salvador because we kind of found out about Salvador later as we started doing more research about Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
So then that November is Black Consciousness Month. And we found out that we were going to be there during Black Consciousness Month. So they were doing celebrations all across the country. Well, I forget what day it is, but it's in November. They have Black Consciousness Day, which is like their pretty much like day of remembering like the contributions of Black folks. This was the first year they did it last year.
Oh.
So there was a lot of emphasis on it. So Afro-punk comes up. And I'm like, bruh, they got Tim's, they got Wyclef, they got Sister Nancy pulling up, they got Coco Jones, and then they got so many like dope Brazilian artists, like this dude named Pericles. He's known as the voice of Brazil.
Okay.
Pericles.
Okay.
If you have not, YBT fam, if you don't know who Pericles is, that's like the Luther Vandross of Brazil.
Oh,
He-
wow. Okay.
That big man can sing. Big Luther, not little Luther.
Okay.
That man can sing. That man can sing. Like when I tell you, like he came on stage after Tim's,
Mm-hmm.
and he had people in there crying, like from all ages. Everybody knew his songs too, like that. So Afro-punk, we found out about Afro-punk. I'm like, yo, all these people gonna be here, and we're gonna be in Salvador. We're going. So Daryl and I, we started looking at the tickets. Everything's in reais, so we like, well, how much does this cost? Because I'm like, I'm not really a concert person,
Mm-hmm.
and as of late, like I'm not really good around like really big crowds.
Okay.
So I was like, you know what? We're gonna try it. So one thing I liked about Afro-punk was not only the lineup
Mm-hmm.
was amazing, it was 2 days, but then they also made it affordable.
Mm.
Not just for, and I'm not speaking from a stance where like, hey, like I'm coming down there as a tourist spending US dollar,
Mm.
and this is cheap for me. No. From a standpoint of where they had a student discount, they got a senior citizen discount. Like if you bank with this bank, they got a discount for that. You can donate non-perishable food items and get like a discount ticket for that. And it made it so accessible that a lot of like Brazilians were in there, and I really liked it. That was really dope. The other thing about it too was that it was ran so well. To be around 30 or 40,000 people, because I think Afro-punk is one of the largest Black musical festivals in the world.
Yes.
To be around that many Black people was dope. Like the activation stations were amazing. Like they back there braiding hair, they selling jewelry, they got a little bit of everything going on. And the artists were amazing. The energy was crazy, and the food was fire. So I was definitely like blown away. And a lot of my friends now that we met up there with, they all talking about going again this year. So we waiting to see what the lineup gonna look like. But definitely had a great time at Afro-punk.
Okay. Awesome. All right. And, since you seem to know quite a bit of, Brazilian history, what can you share with us about like the Black resistance history in Brazil?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we as a people have always had resistance in us. That goes from, being taken from our native lands to folks resisting by giving their bodies to the sea to folks getting here and figuring out how to preserve our traditions and customs. And I think we're gonna be okay because of that. Like Kendra said, we're gonna be all right. But there's a huge culture of resistance in Brazil, especially with our Afro-Brazilian brothers and sisters. So when you look at it, like it starts even with the music. Samba music was outlawed, right? Capoeira. When you look at capoeira, it was, defense mechanism disguised as them dancing. And so when they came out to the fields and saw us, they were just, we act like we dancing, but really preparing for a battle, right?
Yeah.
To even just look at now, like how favelas became a form of resistance. People be like, oh, like favelas is the hood. No, favelas are communities because they literally had nothing. So favelas provide their own power.
Wow.
They were providing their own mail system. They look out for the kids in the community. And, when you go in there, it's all about respect. Like, I think one of the lost arts, especially for us as Black Americans, has been, we moved away from being village people.
Yeah.
Growing up, like, if I'm doing something wrong, my mama told my auntie and them, my uncle, my grandpa, you got permission to tear his butt up.
Yep.
And we always looked out for each other. I think that's something that's becoming slowly a lost art, and I want to see that like implemented. But there's always just been this culture of resistance, whether it's been in the music, whether it's been in dance. When you talk about ballet charming, because ballet charming, even when you talk about people line dance, you're like, oh, cool, like this is a dope line dance that they're doing. But it even means more than that, because what are they doing? Like, they got to come practice to bring the community together, right?
Yeah.
They're giving folks a break from their day-to-day lives. You got something to look forward to during a weekly basis, right? And also people want to come time and spend time together and have a good time, drink a couple beers and do a couple dances, So, yeah, I think they had a great culture of resistance, and it's something that I think hasn't really been discovered as well outside of the room.
Okay, good. Okay, awesome. So we're going to jump into our next segment, which is we're just gonna have a little bit of a real. Actually, no. Before we move on, I almost forgot. What does Brazil get right about Black culture that the U.S. needs to work on?
Yeah. Community. I think we could do a much better job. Individualism has kind of hurt us, and I think here there's been a lot of gatekeeping.
That is very true. People not wanting to share and really yeah. Okay.
I'll say this. I got one, because I don't know if you noticed this, but in a lot of spaces that I've been in, especially when I started working in tech, people just want to know like what you do so they can figure out how you can benefit them. And it's always like playing this little mind game. Like, I really started to despise the question people ask like, what do you do? Because I'm more than just my job. I feel like when I leave like places outside the US, like people are just genuinely interested in you versus what you can do for them.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that, and usually when they ask you what do you do, they just leave it there, just like you said, and they keep it within the realm of your job, and they kind of allow that to define you in a way. But I do agree that we as in the US need to work on building back communities amongst our people. So yes. Okay. Fair enough. Now let's have a little bit of real talk. So we won't hit him with the big one just yet. Let's slide in and say, what are the budget expectations of traveling to Brazil, or what should we anticipate? Are there any surprises we should be aware of?
Yeah, so me as a budget traveler, I look for the deal, but I'm not cheap. I will pay for my comfort, and I have to do what makes sense at the end of the day, right?
There we go.
So flying a budget airline for 9 hours is not gonna work for your boy. I'm 6'5".
Absolutely not.
However, what you can do, there are some great airlines that are based in Latin America, like LATAM.
Okay.
It's very similar to Delta. And sometimes what I do is like usually when Delta has a flight, they'll partner with LATAM. And so instead of booking through Delta, I book through LATAM, and it might be like $100 cheaper. And I'm still on a Delta flight, and I still get Delta points.
Okay.
Yeah. So LATAM got Latin America on lock. They have a great fleet of planes. They got the screens, good leg room. So look into that because the flight is going to probably be your most expensive cost by far. Getting down there because it's definitely. I know you're in New York, so.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, getting that flight together is going to be your biggest obstacle. But also, like if you book early, you can definitely get a decent price on the flights. So definitely like book early, look at your map, and map out your route where you want to go. Once you get into Brazil, it's pretty inexpensive to fly between the cities.
Okay.
But you just want to make sure you book those with probably a little more than like a couple weeks out, because as it gets into like that last 2 week window, like the flights really start to get jacked up. As far as the prices. Yeah. The lodging's not bad. Like Airbnbs and hotels that we stayed in, they have some nice amenities, very fairly priced. The only thing I will say, and I will never get used to this,
What?
is that in a lot of Latin American countries, like you can't throw the toilet paper down the toilet. And I hate it. I can never get used to it. I hate it. Like, it's like, I'm like, why is there a trash can next to the toilet? And I remember opening it one time, and I'm like, they were like, you're not supposed to flush the toilet paper, like. And I'm just like, I can't get my mind around, like, this ain't it. This ain't it, y'all.
This ain't it. Like, I'm laughing because when I was living in South Korea for like the first couple months while still like exploring the areas, I ran into that situation. There were some places where it's like, you don't throw it in the toilet. And I was like, oh, okay. This is very different. Not a fan, but okay, I get it. So I understand. I understand. All right. Now, when would be the best time? When would be the best time that you would recommend for people to travel to Brazil?
That's a really good question because it depends on who you ask. But like for me, especially if you're gonna go to Rio, I like shoulder season. So right now, like they're coming out of summer, they're like in fall because they're in the southern hemisphere, so their seasons are opposite as well.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, like they're coming out of their summer, which they just finished up Carnival. I don't think I got it in me to do a real Carnival because the city's already lit by itself.
Yeah.
I can only imagine like what it looks like during Carnival. God bless those who go. Maybe you could call me 10 years ago. But I'm a shoulder season fan, so I would say like either that in the fall for us, like that October, November into early December before Carnival hits. That shoulder season leading up, that's their springtime leading up into summer. It's a great time to go. That's when I went the first time. And then when I went back the second time, I came in fall, which is the shoulder season. So the prices for the Airbnbs are a lot more affordable. It's a lot easier to get around the city because there's not as much traffic. And you can experience more because the beaches aren't super slow, but it's still enough to get into. So I like shoulder season.
Okay. Awesome. And okay, now I think you pretty much kind of talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but that's safety. What would be your advice? Again, I know you said that if something feels off to just, dip out, but can you break it down a little bit more for them?
Yeah, I think so let me back up. So the first time I went, I think the week we were supposed to fly in for the conference, there had just been a mass killing by the government up in the favelas. I think like over 150 people are unalive.
Wow.
So I'm hitting up some of the homies I got a homie that lives down there with his family.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually a black nomad family. They're from Canada, but they live down in Rio.
Mm.
So I hit him up real quick. I'm like, hey, bro, did you hear about this? He's like, yeah, like that's very much true. However, that's probably, an hour away from where you're going to be at.
Okay.
So it's not really affecting you.
Okay.
I live down here with my kids. Like, you should be straight. Where you going to be at?
Okay.
I'm like, all right, bet. But the other thing, I think the biggest thing is when you're traveling in general, right? Petty theft is a thing, right? And so if you make yourself a target, then people will take opportunities, advantage of you.
Yes.
So, my thing is like, don't just be walking out here looking like a damn mark. Put the damn phone away. Like, if you just out here, yes, things are nice. Yes, they're beautiful. Get your footage and put your phone back up, right?
Mm-hmm.
The biggest things that I've heard is that people take phones.
Oh, okay.
I did have a friend who went down there and he apparently got roofied and woke up on the beach.
No.
But he was alive.
Okay.
Some people helped him get back to his hotel.
Okay.
And he just lost the cash that was on him. But he was ultimately safe. So it's like, hey, if you're going out, like, you want to make sure that you watch people make your drinks.
Yeah.
Don't drink after other people. It's just simple protocol. Because I feel like this, like, if I were, for me, like, I'm not gonna do it at home. Like, I'm not gonna do it here. So I'm not gonna go to here just start pulling out phones and tell me what up. Like, people, and I say this because people think it's cool to like go to a favela and just start pulling out their phones. Like, people live here, bro.
Yeah.
Let's kind of be respectful before we just throw a camera in somebody's face and
Yeah.
understand our surroundings as well. So I think it's just just being smart in how you move,
Mm-hmm.
and being observant of your surroundings, and then also too, if you're going to be like in a crowded place, like maybe like teaming up with some people. So either go with a group or find somebody that is a local that can take you around and kind of show you a good time, because there is a language barrier down there. And I think that's one of the things that people don't talk about, is that Brazilians are very proud people. And unlike other places I've been, you're going to speak some Portuguese. They're not going to play with you.
Okay.
So yeah, if you learn a few words, will take you a long way. Obrigado, just asking for things and saying hi, bom dia, or boa tarde and stuff like that. Like, just learn a few phrases, and they'll rock with you for trying.
Okay. All right. Awesome. All right. So we got one more question for you. Who should not go to Brazil, in your opinion?
That's a loaded question.
Had to get it in there.
I would say, I'll reverse it. I would say this. Like, if you're looking for an amazing place to go, as far as great food, beautiful people, and just like amazing culture, there's so much to do and see. I would say this is one that's for you. Now, I will say this. As someone who I consider myself to be an experienced traveler, it is one of the more difficult trips I've had to put together. So I think there are like strength in numbers.
Okay.
And just understanding the lay of the land. Because, as Americans, we're very privileged to speak a language where people are always going to try to accommodate us. And so the language barrier, that can be somewhat tough at times. But then also, too, it's a very much like getting there is a hump. Like, you're talking about a 9-hour flight from Miami.
Yeah.
So, yes, understanding those things and have your logistics in order. But it's a great place and it's absolutely worth it. And I'd say this, like, stay a little longer. Like, I know, like, some folks might want to go. This ain't a 4-day trip, y'all. You're going to be mad at yourself. So, like, give yourself some time to be down there and enjoy it, because you're going to spend, like, 2 days traveling.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right. Awesome. All right. So we are winding down, but before we dive into our closing section, I have one other question for you. So since the Brazil trip was 9 hours, do you think you would be able to handle what is it, 13 or 14-hour flight to South Korea then?
Yes, but see, this is the reason why I haven't been to Asia. So my longest flight, I think, was like 23 hours in total. I went to Tanzania, and I stopped over in Amsterdam, and and then I made my way down to Tanzania from there. So when I do go to Asia, like I've already planned it out, I'm going to fly from the West Coast and start in Tokyo because that's like a 10-hour flight.
Okay.
And then I'm chilling. I'm gonna work my way down, and I'm probably gonna stay like a month at least, and then come back.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not going straight over there. 15 hours straight? No, no.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So let's jump into our closing little game, and for our game today, it's called Finish the Sentence. So Jacque, I'm gonna start off the sentences, and then I want you to finish it with the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay? So no long thinking, just let it out. Got it? All right, here we go. Brazil changed me by...
Culture.
Okay. All right. Here we go. The next one. I wasn't expecting...
To feel like home.
Oh, okay, good. And our number 3, if you're thinking about going...
Go.
Okay. And the biggest mistake travelers make is...
Find your people.
Okay. Awesome. All right, cool. So we are going to close it off. So there's just something about experiences like this that remind you that traveling isn't just about the destination. It's about what pulls you out of yourself while you are there. So I want to give a huge thank you again to Jacque for tapping in and sharing his journey, his experience with us, and some of what he's learned. Because this wasn't just a trip, it was a perspective. And if you've been enjoying this episode, please make sure that you're tapped in with us across all platforms so that you don't miss what's coming next. You can find us on Facebook at Young Black Travelers, TikTok at Young Black Travelers, Instagram and Threads at Young Black Travelers blog, and YouTube at Young Black Travelers. And for everything YBT, please visit the Young Black Travelers website. So if you're interested in our YBT merch or just want to connect with us, feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, when you're out exploring the world, stay aware, keep good sanitary practices, and take care of yourself wherever you go. Now, as we are about to go out, I will just ask Jacque really quick. Do you have one person or a company or an entity that you would love to shout out?
Yeah, definitely. I want to shout out my grandmother first because she instilled in me just the ideal of traveling from a young age. So without her, I wouldn't have this curiosity to see the world. But as far as companies, definitely got to give a shout out to Florencia Tours down in Brazil. Damiana is amazing. If you're ever down there and need a Afro-Brazilian woman to take you on a guide and is owned by her, tap in with Damiana. She's amazing, and she's from the favelas, built her own tourism company, and is now doing Afro tourism in the city of Rio. So that's the homie right there.
Okay, awesome. All right. Thank you, Jacque. And until next time, everyone, happy travels.